I once trusted Elise with everything, my heart, my dreams, my future. For 5 years, I was the husband who gave up promotions so she could climb higher. I was the one who held her mother's hand through chemo when she was working late. But those late nights weren't about work. They were about Victor, her college ex who suddenly needed her mentorship. I died on our anniversary, driving to surprise her with flowers. Then I was reborn, 3 years in the past, to the day she first asked me out. This time, I won't be naive. I'll let her build her perfect life, her path to CEO, her secret affair. But unlike before, I'll be ready. And when she thinks she's won everything, I'll be there to destroy it all. I died on our 5th wedding anniversary. The rain was coming down hard that night as I drove to surprise Elise with her favorite lilies. She had called earlier, voice dripping with regret, saying she couldn't make our dinner reservation because of an emergency board meeting. Just like last month's canceled vacation. Just like Christmas with my parents. My phone buzzed with a text from James, my college roommate who worked at Elise's company. No words, just a photo taken minutes ago. My wife in the corner of the hotel bar across from her office building, laughing intimately with a man I recognized all too well. Victor Chen, her college sweetheart who had conveniently rejoined her life 2 years ago as a business contact. The anger blurred my vision, or maybe it was the tears. Either way, I didn't see the truck run the red light until it was too late. They say your life flashes before your eyes when you die. Mine didn't. Instead, I saw all the moments I had ignored. The late-night texts she shielded from my view, the business trips that never appeared in company newsletters, the way she said his name in her sleep. 5 years of lies tallied in my final seconds, then darkness, and then, impossibly, light. I woke up gasping, heart hammering against my ribs. But instead of pain, instead of the crushing metal and shattered glass, I felt only soft cotton sheets against my skin. The room was familiar but wrong. My old university apartment, the one I'd shared with James before graduation. The calendar on the wall read October 15th, 3 years before I would marry Elise. I stumbled to the bathroom, nearly collapsing when I saw my reflection. Young, unscored, 22 years old again. The crow's feet earned from years of stress were gone. So was the wedding ring. A knock at the door pulled me from my shock. James, younger, hair still thick, no corporate exhaustion in his eyes, leaned against the doorframe. You're going to be late for advanced economics, and you know Professor Grant locks the door exactly at 9. My mind raced as I mechanically gathered my books. This couldn't be happening. Yet everything felt too solid, too real to be a near-death hallucination. Walking across campus, I tried to rationalize what was happening. Maybe the accident had put me in a coma, and this was some elaborate dream. Or maybe I had actually died, and this was some cosmic joke, forcing me to relive the biggest mistake of my life. Then I saw her. Elise stood by the economics building fountain, beautiful in that effortless way that had made my heart stop the first time around. Her hair was longer then, cascading down her back instead of the sharp executive cut she would later adopt. She was talking animatedly with 2 friends, and I realized with a jolt what day this was. This was the day Elise Morgan first asked me out. I scanned the area and spotted him immediately. Victor Chen, watching her from a bench, pretending to read. Even then, he was never far. How had I missed it the first time? Marcus, hey, wait up. Elise jogged toward me, that radiant smile brightening her face. The smile that had made me overlook so many red flags. I saved you a seat in Grant's class, she said, falling into step beside me. Her perfume was the same, vanilla and jasmine. The scent that still clung to our bedsheets the night she didn't come home. Also, I was wondering if maybe you wanted to grab coffee after. I need help with that market volatility assignment. This was it. The innocent request that had led to our first date. I remembered being flattered that the smartest girl in class wanted my help, not realizing she had specifically chosen me for my willingness to do her work. Not Victor, who would have expected something in return. But knave, helpful Marcus. Sure, I heard myself say, but something had changed inside me. Coffee sounds good. As we walked into class, I made my decision. I would go through the motions, but this time I would be counting. Every lie. Every manipulation. Every time she chose ambition or Victor over me. And I would build my escape route brick by brick while she thought I remained the same devoted fool. That night I started a journal, documenting everything with the precision of someone who knew how. The story ended. I opened a separate bank account the next day. By the end of the week, I had devised a 5-year plan that would run parallel to hers, one she would never suspect. Our relationship progressed much as it had before. Coffee led to studying together, which led to dinner dates. I played my part perfectly, the adoring boyfriend who believed in her dreams more than his own. But this time, I was building my own life in the shadows of hers. When she complained about her difficult boss, I helped her draft the perfect emails, knowing they would catch the CEO's attention and start her meteoric rise. When she mentioned applying for the junior executive position, I spent weekends helping her prepare, knowing it would eventually lead her to Victor's department. 6 months into our relationship, Victor made his first appearance at a company event where I accompanied Elise. The look that passed between them lasted only seconds, but I caught it this time. The history. The unfinished business. An old friend from undergrad, she explained casually. We had some classes together. The first lie I counted. They had dated for 2 years before he left to study abroad. As graduation approached, Elise received 2 job offers, one at a prestigious firm in Boston, another at the company where she would eventually become CEO. The company where Victor had just been hired. The Boston offer pays more, I noted, testing her. But the growth potential at Sanders Corp is better long-term, she countered, her decision already made. I nodded supportively while adding another tally to my mental count. The day we moved in together, I secreted away documents in a lockbox that she never knew existed. When I received my own job offer that required significant travel, I accepted it without hesitation, using the time away to build connections she knew nothing about. "I'll miss you," she said, kissing me goodbye before my first business trip. That night from my hotel room, I watched through a security app as she invited friends over, including Victor, who stayed long after the others left. One more tally mark. I returned with an engagement ring 3 months later, because that's what the old Marcus would have done. Her tears seemed genuine when she said yes. Perhaps they were. Perhaps in her way, she did love me, just never as much as she loved what Victor and success could offer her. 2 years into our relationship, Elise's career reached a crucial turning point. Sanders Corp was launching a new division, and she had been shortlisted for the leadership team. The position would require extensive networking, presentation skills, and someone to help her shine in the background. "This could be everything we've been working toward," she said, clutching my hands one evening. "If I get this, I'll be on the executive track." I noted her use of "we" with internal amusement. In my previous life, I had been genuinely invested in her success, believing we were building something together. This time, I recognized the manipulation for what it was. "What can I do to help?" I asked, playing my role perfectly. The next day, my own director called me into his office. "Marcus, I've been watching your work for months. That Parker account was brilliantly handled. I want to put you up for the senior analyst position, the promotion I had worked toward for over a year. The one that would have elevated my career significantly. The same opportunity I had sacrificed in my previous life. The timing is a bit tricky," my director continued. "We need someone to lead the transition team immediately. It would mean traveling to Chicago 3 days a week for the next 6 months. I knew what this meant. If I took the position, I couldn't help Elise prepare for her interviews and networking events. I couldn't be her personal assistant, speechwriter, and support system while she climbed the corporate ladder. "Can I have a day to think about it?" I asked. That night, Elise bubbled with excitement about her opportunity. Not once did she ask about my day or my potential promotion. When I casually mentioned the Chicago project, her face fell. "Oh, Marcus, that's a terrible time for you to be away. Who will help me prepare my presentations? You know I rely on you for that." There it was, the moment I had been waiting for. The first major sacrifice she would expect without hesitation. "You're right," I said, smiling. "This is your moment. I'll tell them I can't take the position." Relief flooded her face, followed by a kiss that felt more like gratitude than love. "You're the best. I couldn't do this without you." The next day, I declined the promotion, just as I had in my previous life. But this time, I had a plan. While helping Elise prepare her perfect image for the Sanders Corp leadership, I began freelancing for their competitors on the side. Every presentation I wrote for her, I documented. Every strategy I helped her develop, I kept records of. Information that would be invaluable later. 3 months later, Elise was appointed to the leadership team. Her first major event was a corporate gala where she would meet the full board of directors. "You need to make the perfect impression," I told her, helping select her outfit. "These connections will matter for years to come." Her eyes sparkled with ambition as she nodded. I know exactly which people to focus on. At the gala, I played the proud boyfriend, staying just visible enough to be appropriate, but fading into the background when necessary. Elise worked the room masterfully, her laugh carrying across the banquet hall as she charmed one executive after another. Then I saw him. Victor Chen, looking polished in a tailored suit, heading straight for Elise. My heart raced despite knowing this moment was coming. "Elise Morgan," he said, his voice carrying just enough for me to hear. "I heard you joined the leadership team. Congratulations." The way her posture changed was subtle but unmistakable. A slight straightening of her spine, a tilt of her head that exposed her neck. Body language I had missed the first time around. "Victor, what a surprise. I had no idea you were with Sanders Corp." Another lie. She had known for months, had strategically pursued this division, partly because of his presence. "Just transferred from the Boston office," he said smoothly. "I'm heading up the investment strategy team now." I watched him from across the room, pretending to be engrossed in conversation with another guest. Their interaction lasted barely 5 minutes, but it was enough. The foundation had been laid for what would become their accidental reconnection. When we returned home that night, Elise was electric with excitement. The CFO loved my ideas about the Asian market expansion, and the VP of Operations wants me to join his think tank. Not once did she mention Victor. "You were amazing tonight," I said, adding another tally to my mental count. 6 months later, Elise received her first major promotion. We celebrated with champagne and a weekend getaway that she cut short for an emergency meeting. I knew from my previous life that Victor would be at that meeting, positioned strategically at her side. By our 3rd anniversary, Elise was firmly established in the executive pipeline at Sanders Corp. I had continued declining career advancements that would take me away from supporting her, cultivating my image as the devoted partner who prioritized her success over my own. "Let's get married," she suggested one evening, surprising me with the timing. In my previous life, I had been the one to propose at this stage. "We've been together for years. It makes sense." I understood the real motivation behind her sudden interest in marriage. She was being considered for the VP position, and a stable home life would look better to the conservative board members. A boyfriend could leave. A husband suggested permanence. "I'd love that," I replied, knowing it was another step in the careful dance we were performing. The wedding was elegant but modest, another calculated move on her part. Too extravagant would suggest frivolity to the board. Too simple would miss the opportunity to network. She invited key executives, including Victor, who brought a date I knew wouldn't last. As we exchanged vows, I looked into Elise's eyes and saw genuine emotion there. Perhaps in her way, she did love me. But it was a love that would always be secondary to her ambition and her unresolved feelings for Victor. At the wedding, I suggested combining our finances. It would make things easier, I argued, knowing what her response would be. "I think keeping some independence is healthy," she countered. "We can have a joint account for household expenses, but maintain our separate accounts too." I agreed easily, having already anticipated this. In my previous life, I had fought for complete financial merging, believing it represented trust and partnership. This time, I was grateful for her insistence on separation. It made my parallel financial life much easier to maintain. 2 months after our wedding, Elise's mother was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer. The treatment would be intensive, requiring regular chemo sessions and constant care. "I don't know how I'll manage this with my schedule," Elise fretted, more concerned about her career trajectory than her mother's health. "I'll take care of it," I offered. "I can work remotely on the days she has treatment." Relief washed over Elise's face. "You do that? Marcus, you're a lifesaver." And so I became the primary caretaker for my mother-in-law, while Elise worked increasingly late hours. As I sat beside her mother during chemo sessions, holding her hand through the worst of the nausea, I built a relationship with her that was genuine and deep. A relationship that would prove invaluable when the truth finally came to light. It was during one of those chemo sessions that Patricia, Elise's mother, inadvertently gave me the first concrete piece of evidence. "Victor stopped by yesterday," she mentioned casually as the nurse adjusted her IV. "He brought that French tea I like. So thoughtful of Elise to send him." I kept my expression neutral. "Victor Chen? From Elise's company," Patricia nodded. "They've been working closely on that new startup project. She mentioned he might check in on me when she couldn't make it." I filed this information away carefully. In my previous life, I had never known Victor had visited Patricia. More importantly, I had never known about any startup project involving Elise and Victor. That evening, I did something I had never done before. I checked Elise's work laptop while she was in the shower. Her password was the same as always. Her college graduation date followed by her mother's initials. Predictable. Within minutes, I found what I was looking for. Hidden in a folder labeled Personal Tax Documents were files detailing a significant investment of company resources into a fledgling tech startup called Innovate Tech. The company's CEO was listed as Victor Chen. I quickly photographed the documents with my phone before closing everything exactly as I had found it. This was the first tangible proof of what I had suspected all along. The next morning, I called an old college friend who now worked at the Securities and Exchange Commission. If someone were diverting corporate resources to a private company without proper board approval, what documentation would be needed to prove it? I asked hypothetically. Depends on the amount and nature of the resources, he replied. Money trails are easiest to follow. Email authorizations, fund transfers, resource allocations. Why do you ask? Just helping a friend with a business ethics paper, I lied smoothly. Over the next few weeks, I systematically gathered evidence. Each time Elise worked late, I used the opportunity to dig deeper. I discovered that she had authorized the transfer of proprietary research data to Innovate Tech. She had allocated Sanders Corp developers to special projects that actually benefited Victor's startup. Most damning of all, she had diverted nearly $200,000 of development funds through a series of obscured transactions, all while rising through the ranks at Sanders Corp, portrayed as their golden executive. Despite my discoveries, I maintained my role as the supportive husband. I continued caring for Patricia, whose condition was gradually improving. I attended company functions on Elise's arm, smiling at the appropriate moments and charming the board members she needed to impress. At one such function, I met Lawrence Henderson, the eldest board member of Sanders Corp. He was a shrewd man in his 60s who had been with the company since its founding days. Your wife is quite the rising star, he commended, watching Elise work the room. The board has high hopes for her. She's certainly dedicated to the company, I replied carefully. Something in my tone must have caught his attention. Henderson gave me a long, assessing look. Perhaps we should have lunch sometime. I'd be interested in hearing more about your work. I recognized the opportunity immediately. I'd be honored, sir. Our lunch the following week was ostensibly about my own career, but I sensed Henderson was fishing for information about Elise. I was careful not to reveal anything directly, but I planted seeds of doubt about the allocation of resources in her division. I'm sure it's all above board, I concluded. Elise is meticulous about following proper channels. Henderson's eyes narrowed slightly. Yes, I'm sure she is. I had made my first ally on the board, though neither of us acknowledged it explicitly. As months passed, Elise grew increasingly distant. She canceled dinner plans at the last minute. She came home smelling of unfamiliar cologne. She took phone calls in another room. All things I had ignored or rationalized in my previous life. This time, I documented everything. I installed a subtle app on our home security system that notified me whenever someone entered or left. I kept records of her excuses and later verified them against her actual whereabouts. It was during this period that I met Claire. She was a nurse at the oncology center where Patricia received treatment. Unlike Elise, Claire had a genuine warmth that had nothing to do with calculation or ambition. She noticed how often I was there alone with Patricia. Your dedication to your mother-in-law is remarkable, she said one day as we both watched Patricia sleeping after a particularly difficult session. Most families split the responsibility. My wife has an important career, I explained, the practiced excuse coming easily. Claire nodded, but her eyes held no judgment. And what about you? Don't you have work? The question caught me off guard. In my previous life and even in this one, few people ever asked about my sacrifices. I manage, I said simply. Over the following weeks, Claire and I developed a friendship based on mutual respect and genuine conversation. I found myself looking forward to Patricia's treatments, not just to gather evidence through Patricia's unwitting revelations, but to spend time talking with Claire. I was careful to keep appropriate boundaries. I was still married, still playing the long game. But Claire represented something I had forgotten existed, a relationship based on authentic connection rather than utility. One evening, Elise returned home from another late meeting looking flustered. Everything okay? I asked, noting the slight smudge in her lipstick. Fine, she snapped, just a stressful day. I nodded sympathetically. Want to talk about it? No, she softened her tone. I just need a shower and sleep. Later that night, her phone buzzed with a text. I glimpsed the screen, Victor's name and a message that began about tonight. I didn't need to read the rest. Instead, I sent an email to myself with the date and time of this incident, adding it to my growing documentation. The next morning, Elise was unusually attentive, making breakfast and asking about my plans for the day. The guilt was palpable, though I pretended not to notice. I was thinking, she said casually, maybe we should look at that vacation we've been putting off. The Maldives, perhaps. I recognized the pattern from my previous life. Extravagant gestures always followed her indiscretions. That sounds wonderful, I replied. When are we thinking? Next month. I can probably get away for a week. I agreed enthusiastically, knowing it would never happen. Some emergency would arise, some crisis only she could handle. Some reason for her to stay close to Victor. True to form, 3 weeks later, Elise regretfully informed me that a major client needed her attention during our planned vacation dates. I'm so sorry, Marcus. I know how much you were looking forward to it. I assured her I understood, playing the supportive husband while adding another tally to my mental count. That weekend, while Elise attended an emergency strategy session, I took Patricia to the botanical gardens. Her strength was returning, and she enjoyed the fresh air and beauty of the flowers. You know, she said as we sat on a bench overlooking a coed pond, I worry about Elise sometimes. I glanced at her, surprised by the comment. What do you mean? Patricia sighed. She's always been so focused on success. Even as a child. Nothing was ever enough. She paused, looking at me directly. I worry she doesn't appreciate what she has right in front of her. The irony wasn't lost on me. People often don't value what comes easily, I replied. Patricia patted my hand. You're a good man, Marcus. Better than she deserves, perhaps. I changed the subject, but her words stayed with me. Even Elise's own mother could see the truth of our marriage. The CEO announcement came on a Tuesday morning. I knew it was coming. In my previous life, I had helped Elise prepare for the final interview, crafting answers that would appeal to the board's concerns about her relative youth and aggressive growth strategies. This time, I had still helped her prepare, knowing that her promotion was essential to my plan. The Sanders Corp email went out to all employees. Elise Morgan-Wells named new Chief Executive Officer, effective immediately. She called me, voice breathless with excitement. They chose me, Marcus, the youngest CEO in company history. Congratulations, I said, infusing my voice with pride and admiration. I knew you could do it. There's a celebration tonight at the Ritz. The board wants to introduce me to the major shareholders. Wear your blue suit, the one I bought you last Christmas. I agreed, playing my part perfectly. That evening, as we prepared for the celebration, Elise was radiant with triumph. I watched her apply her makeup with meticulous precision, the movements so familiar to me now. You deserve this, I told her. Everything you've worked for. Something in my tone made her pause. She met my eyes in the mirror, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face before her confident mask returned. We deserve this, she corrected. I couldn't have done it without you. For a brief moment, I wondered if she actually believed that or if she was simply saying what she thought I needed to hear. Either way, it didn't matter now. The celebration was extravagant. The board had spared no expense to welcome their new CEO. Champagne flowed freely, and congratulations surrounded Elise from every direction. I stood by her side when appropriate, disappeared when necessary, the perfect supportive husband. Victor was there, of course. As Chief Strategy Officer, his presence was expected. But I noticed how carefully they avoided each other, maintaining a professional distance that would seem natural to observers, but that I knew was calculated. Lawrence Henderson approached me during a moment when Elise was occupied with shareholders. Your wife has achieved something remarkable, he said, sipping his scotch. Though I confess I had some reservations. Oh, I kept my expression neutral. The board received some concerning information about resource allocation in her division. Nothing conclusive, mind you. His eyes were sharp, assessing my reaction. But enough to warrant a deeper look after the transition period. I nodded slightly. I'm sure she'll welcome any review. Elise has always been transparent about her methods. Henderson's lip quirked in what might have been amusement. Indeed, I look forward to working with her. He paused. And with you, Marcus, your insights have been valuable. As he walked away, I realized how carefully he had chosen his words. The seeds I had planted months ago were taking root. Later that night, Elise was still riding the high of her achievement. She opened another bottle of champagne when we returned home, kicking off her heels and pulling me toward the bedroom. To us, she toasted, eyes bright with triumph and alcohol. I played along, celebrating with her as expected. But as she fell asleep in my arms, I remained awake, mentally reviewing my timeline. Now that she had achieved her ultimate goal, the final phase of my plan could begin. The next morning, I made her favorite breakfast while she nursed a mild hangover. I've been thinking, I said casually. Now that you're CEO, our anniversary next month should be special. What if we recreate our first date, dinner at Antonelli's, then that walk along the riverfront? Her smile seemed genuine. That sounds perfect. I'll clear my calendar. I knew she wouldn't. In my previous life, she had canceled our anniversary dinner for an emergency board meeting that never appeared in any company records. Over the next 2 weeks, Elise threw herself into her new role with characteristic intensity. She left before dawn and returned after midnight. On the rare occasions when she was home, she was constantly on her phone or laptop. I used her absences to finalize my preparations. I transferred the last of my personal funds to accounts she couldn't access. I compiled all my evidence of her financial misconduct into a comprehensive file. I consulted discreetly with a divorce attorney, laying the groundwork for a clean break. 3 days before our anniversary, I was taking Patricia to her final chemo session when she made a comment that confirmed my worst suspicions from my previous life. Elise mentioned you might be moving after the anniversary, she said casually. Something about a fresh start now that she's CEO. I told her I'd miss having you so close by. I kept my expression neutral while my mind raced. In my previous life, I had died on our anniversary night. Now I understood why. Elise hadn't been planning to celebrate with me. She had been planning to leave me. I'm not aware of any moving plans, I said carefully. Patricia looked confused. Oh, perhaps I misunderstood. But I knew she hadn't. Elise was planning something for after our anniversary. Something that wouldn't require my consent or participation. That evening, I went into Elise's home office while she was at work. I needed to know exactly what she was planning. It took me nearly an hour of searching before I found what I was looking for, hidden in a folder marked Legal Personal. A life insurance policy. On me. For $5 million. Taken out 6 months earlier and recently increased. The beneficiary was Elise, of course. Next to it was a folder containing divorce papers, already drawn up but unsigned. The terms were brutally one-sided, leaving me with almost nothing from our years together. Most damning of all was an email chain with Victor, carefully worded but clear in its implications when read with knowledge of their relationship. After a day, we can proceed with the transition. Everything is in place. He won't be an obstacle. I photographed everything, adding it to my evidence file. Then I carefully replaced everything exactly as I had found it. That night, when Elise finally came home, I greeted her with a loving kiss and mentioned how excited I was for our upcoming anniversary. I've made all the arrangements, I told her. Just like we discussed. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I can't wait. The next day, I put the final pieces of my plan into motion. I contacted Lawrence Henderson and requested an urgent meeting of the board's Financial Oversight Committee. I cited concerns about potential ethical violations that could damage the company's reputation. Henderson agreed immediately. The morning after tomorrow works. The full board will be gathered for the quarterly review anyway. Our anniversary. Perfect, I replied. That evening, Elise was unusually attentive. She came home early with takeout from my favorite restaurant and actually put her phone away during dinner. I've been thinking, she said, refilling my wine glass. After our anniversary dinner tomorrow, what if we drive up to that overlook on Mountain Road? The one with the view of the city? It would be romantic. Mountain Road. The same road where I had died in my previous life. The same winding, poorly lit stretch where a truck had hit my car on a rainy night. That sounds perfect, I said, smiling. I'll drive. Her expression flickered briefly before settling back into warm affection. Actually, I thought I could drive. You deserve to relax on your anniversary. I nodded agreeably. Whatever you think is best. Later that night, I heard her on the phone in the bathroom, speaking in hushed tones. I didn't need to hear the words to know she was finalizing her plans with Victor. As I pretended to sleep, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Tomorrow, everything would change. The careful count I had been keeping for years would finally reach its conclusion. The tally of betrayals was almost complete. Anniversary morning dawned clear and bright. I woke early, watching Elise sleep beside me, her face peaceful in a way it rarely was when awake. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to remember why I had loved her. Her determination, her intelligence, her ability to light up a room. In another life with different choices, we might have been happy. But not in this one. I slipped out of bed and dressed carefully in my best suit. Not the blue one she had bought me, but a charcoal gray custom piece I had purchased secretly. Today wasn't about playing the role she expected. Today was about becoming who I truly was. When Elise woke, she seemed momentarily startled to find me already dressed. Happy anniversary, I said, placing a small gift box on the bedside table. Inside was a pair of sapphire earrings I knew she had been eyeing. They're beautiful, she said, genuinely pleased. My gift for you is at the office. I'll bring it tonight. Another lie. There was no gift. There never had been. I have an early meeting with a potential client, I told her. But I'll see you at Antonelli's at 7. She kissed me goodbye, and I felt nothing. The man who had loved her despite everything had died in that car crash. The man who walked out the door that morning was someone else entirely. Instead of meeting a client, I went directly to Sanders Corp headquarters. Security waved me through. The CEO's husband was a familiar face by now. I took the elevator to the top floor where the boardroom was located. Lawrence Henderson was waiting outside, along with 4 other board members who comprised the Financial Oversight Committee. "Marcus," he greeted me. "We've cleared the schedule as requested. The full board will join us at 9. I nodded my thanks and followed them into the room. My evidence was organized into clear, concise presentations: the financial diversions, the misappropriation of company resources, the clear pattern of preferential treatment toward innovative tech. I had spent months preparing this moment, ensuring every allegation was backed by undeniable proof. Before we begin, I said, I want to make it clear that this is not about my marriage. This is about protecting Sanders Corp from potentially devastating financial and reputational damage. The board members exchanged glances, but nodded for me to continue. For the next hour, I methodically laid out the evidence. I showed them the papered trail of diverted funds, the emails authorizing improper resource allocation, the pattern of decisions that consistently benefited Victor's startup at the expense of Sanders Corp. The total financial impact, I concluded, amounts to approximately $3.2 million in direct funding and an estimated $8 million in intellectual property value. The room was silent when I finished. Lawrence Henderson was the first to speak. "These allegations are extremely serious. If even half of what you've presented is accurate, we have a significant problem." "Everything I've presented is verifiable through company records," I replied. "I've provided the exact locations and access paths for all documents." Another board member, a sharp-eyed woman named Janet Kwan, studied me carefully. "Why are you bringing this to us now, Mr. Wells? These activities span over 2 years. I met her gaze steadily. "I only became aware of the full extent recently, and I needed to be certain before making such serious allegations." She nodded, seemingly satisfied with my answer. "We'll need to bring in legal counsel immediately," Henderson said, "and postpone the morning's announcements." The doors opened then, and the remaining board members began filing in for the full board meeting. Among them was Victor Chen, looking confident and completely unaware of what awaited him. As the last person entered, my phone buzzed with a text from Elise. "Running late for our dinner tonight. Emergency meeting called. We'll try to wrap up by 8. Love you." I smiled faintly. The emergency meeting was about to begin, but not the one she was expecting. Henderson called the meeting to order just as Victor noticed me. His expression shifted from confusion to alarm. He clearly hadn't expected the CEO's husband to be present at a closed board meeting. "Before we proceed with the agenda," Henderson announced, "we have an urgent matter of financial oversight to address." The doors opened once more, and Elise walked in, already speaking. "I apologized for being late. I was just informed about this unscheduled meeting and—" She froze when she saw me sitting at the table among the board members. For a moment, genuine fear flashed across her face before her professional mask slipped back into place. "Marcus, what are you doing here?" Henderson answered before I could. "Mr. Wells has brought some concerning information to our attention. Please have a seat." The next 2 hours were devastating in their methodical destruction of everything Elise had built. I presented the evidence again for the full board, watching as Elise's confident denials gradually transformed into desperate justifications. These were strategic investments, she insisted, meant to position Sanders Corp for future acquisition opportunities. "Without board approval?" Janet Kwan asked coldly. "With no documentation in the official investment portfolio?" Victor remained notably silent throughout the proceedings, his eyes fixed on the table before him. "If I could speak privately with the board," Elise finally said, her voice tight with controlled panic. "I can explain the context that's missing here." "I believe the context is quite clear," Henderson replied. "But yes, we will need to speak privately." He glanced at me and Victor. "If you both would excuse us." I stood gathering my materials. "Of course. I've provided everything needed for your deliberations." As I walked toward the door, Elise caught my arm. "Marcus," she whispered urgently, "what are you doing? This isn't like you." I looked into her eyes, the eyes that had lied to me countless times. "No," I said quietly. "The man you married would have ignored all this. He died on Mountain Road." Her face went pale. I gently removed her hand from my arm and left the room. In the hallway, Victor was waiting, his expression a mixture of anger and calculation. "You have no idea what you've done," he said. "Actually, I know exactly what I've done," I replied calmly. just as I know exactly what you and Elise planned for tonight." He flinched almost imperceptibly. "A tragic accident on Mountain Road," I continued. "A grieving widow collects life insurance. A convenient merger between Sanders Corp and Innovate Tech follows. A love story resumes without obstacles." Victor's face drained of color. "You can't prove any of that." I smiled faintly. "I don't need to. The financial misconduct is enough." Security arrived then, having been called by Henderson. 2 guards escorted Victor from the building while I watched from the lobby. It was nearly noon when the board meeting finally ended. I had waited, knowing what would come next. The elevator doors opened and Elise emerged, flanked by Henderson and the company's legal counsel. Her face was composed but deathly pale. "Ms. Morgan has been suspended pending further investigation," Henderson informed me formally. "We appreciate your bringing this matter to our attention." Elise looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. "You've ruined everything," she said quietly. "No," I replied. "You did that yourself. I just refused to be collateral damage." Security escorted her to her office to collect personal items, then out of the building. I watched from a distance as she stood on the sidewalk, suddenly directionless, her carefully planned future disintegrating around her. I should have felt triumph. I had orchestrated her downfall with the same meticulous attention she had given to her rise. I had countered every move in her game before she made it. Instead, I felt only a profound emptiness, and the slightest hint of something else: freedom. My phone rang. It was Claire. Patricia's final test results came back, she said. "All clear. She wanted me to let you know right away." "That's wonderful news," I replied, feeling a genuine smile form. "I'll visit her this afternoon." "She also mentioned you might need a friend today," Claire added carefully. Something about it being a difficult anniversary. I looked across the street where Elise was now speaking frantically on her phone, likely to Victor. "Actually," I said, "I think today marks something new." I met with Patricia that afternoon at her apartment, bringing the news about Elise that I knew would devastate her, regardless of her own misgivings about her daughter's choices. "They found evidence of financial misconduct," I explained gently. "The board suspended her pending investigation." Patricia closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the blow. "And you were involved in this discovery." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes. I thought something like this might happen," she said, surprising me. "She's been making choices I couldn't understand for a long time now." She took my hand. "Does this mean you're leaving her?" I placed a manila envelope on the coffee table between us. "I filed the divorce papers this morning." Patricia nodded slowly. I suspected as much when Claire called me. She didn't say anything specific, but I could tell something significant had happened. We sat in silence for a moment before she spoke again. "There's something you should know, Marcus, about Elise and Victor." I listened as Patricia confirmed what I had already pieced together. The affair had been ongoing since shortly after Victor joined the company. Elise had confided in her mother about her plans to lead me once she secured the CEO position. What Patricia hadn't known, why didn't tell her, was the more sinister aspect of their plan. "She was going to tell you tonight," Patricia finished, "after your anniversary dinner." "I know," I said simply. Patricia studied my face. "You've known for a while, haven't you?" "About all of it." I nodded. "And still you took care of me through all those chemo sessions. Still you played the supportive husband." She shook her head in wonder. "Why not confront her sooner?" "Because I needed to be certain," I replied, "and because I needed to be ready." Patricia squeezed my hand. "Whatever happens next, you'll always be family to me, Marcus. That won't change with the divorce." I felt a weight lift that I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. "Thank you." When I returned home, Elise was waiting. Her perfect composure had shattered. Her makeup was smeared from crying, her hair disheveled from running her hands through it repeatedly. "How could you do this to me?" she demanded, her voice raw. "To us? Everything we built together?" "There was no us," I replied calmly. "There was you building your career, and me serving your purposes. There was you and Victor planning your future together." She flinched at Victor's name. "That's not fair. I made sacrifices too." "Name one," I challenged. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, unable to formulate a response. "The divorce papers are on the desk," I said. "I've already signed them." "Divorce?" Her voice rose in disbelief. "You're leaving me now, when I need you most? When my entire career is collapsing?" "I'm leaving you because you were planning to murder me tonight." The words hung in the air between us, sharp and unavoidable. Elise went perfectly still. "That's insane," she whispered. "I would never." I pulled out my phone and played a recording, her voice and Victor's, discussing the accident plan for Mountain Road. how the rainy conditions would make it believable, how my brake lines would fail at precisely the right moment. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her face ashen. "I've been documenting everything for months," I said. "Every lie, every betrayal, every plan you made that didn't include me surviving." "Marcus, please," she begged, switching tactics. "We can work this out. I made a terrible mistake, but I do love you. We can start fresh." I regarded her sadly. "Even now, you're still lying. You never loved me. I was convenient, useful, nothing more." "That's not true," she insisted, tears flowing freely now. "In the beginning was calculated too," I interrupted. "You chose me because I was smart enough to help you succeed, but naive enough to never question your motives." She had no response to that. "The police have the recording," I added, "and all the evidence of your financial crimes, the life insurance policy in my name, the planned route for tonight, your detailed conversations with Victor." Her eyes widened in genuine fear. "You can't prove intent. Maybe not definitively, but combined with everything else, it paints a compelling picture." I walked to the door, picking up the suitcase I had packed that morning. "The divorce papers are generous, considering everything. I suggest you sign them before criminal charges complicate matters further." "Where are you going?" she asked, sounding lost. "Away from you," I replied simply. "That's all you need to know." I walked out without looking back. 6 months later, I sat on a park bench watching children play on the nearby jungle gym. Claire sat beside me, her hand comfortably entwined with mine. The aftermath of that anniversary day had unfolded largely as I expected. Alyssa had signed the divorce papers within 24 hours. Criminal investigations into the financial misconduct were ongoing. She and Victor had both been indicted on multiple counts of corporate fraud. The murder conspiracy investigation remained open, though prosecutors were focusing primarily on the financial crimes where the evidence was strongest. Sanders Corp had recovered remarkably well under new leadership. Lawrence Henderson had personally reached out to thank me for preventing further damage to the company. "Penny for your thoughts," Claire said, squeezing my hand gently. "Just reflecting," I replied, "on how different things can be when you stop counting losses and start building something real." Our relationship had developed slowly, respectfully. After the divorce was finalized, we had begun with coffee dates, then dinners, then weekends together. There was an honesty between us that I had never experienced with Elise. No calculations, no hidden agendas. "Patricia called this morning," Claire mentioned. "She wants us to come for dinner this weekend. She's trying a new recipe she found." I smiled. Patricia had not only maintained our relationship after the divorce, but had embraced Claire as well. The bonds of genuine family I had discovered were stronger than legal ties. My phone chimed with an email notification. I checked it briefly, then put the phone away. "Anything important?" Claire asked. "Just the final paperwork from the lawyers. The last of the settlement has been transferred." She nodded, understanding that this represented the final severance of my ties to Elise. "How does it feel to be truly free?" I considered the question carefully. Like I can finally stop counting. Later that evening, as Claire prepared dinner in our apartment, I found myself staring at the calendar on the wall. Exactly 1 year had passed since my death and rebirth. 1 year since I had awakened in the past with the knowledge that would change everything. The doorbell rang. A delivery person handed me an envelope that required my signature. Inside was a letter from Patricia. "Marcus, I've waited to send this until I was certain everything was resolved between you and Elise. There's something you should know that I couldn't tell you before. The night before your anniversary, when you found those documents in Elise's office, I already knew what she was planning. Not just the divorce, but the accident. I overheard her speaking with Victor when they thought I was asleep during one of my worst days after chemo. I tried to call you that night, but couldn't reach you. The next morning, I called Claire in desperation, asking her to warn you somehow. I couldn't be direct, I had no proof, but I needed you to be cautious. I don't know if it made any difference. Perhaps you had already discovered the truth on your own. But I couldn't let it happen without trying to intervene, and I couldn't bear the thought that my own daughter would consider such a terrible act. You gave me back my life through your care during my illness. I couldn't stand by while she took yours. With love and gratitude, Patricia, I folded the letter carefully and tucked it away. All this time, I had thought I was alone in my knowledge, fighting a battle only I understood. But Patricia had seen the truth as well. She had tried to save me, just as I had tried to save myself. Everything okay? Claire called from the kitchen. I joined her, wrapping my arms around her waist as she stirred something that smelled delicious. Everything is perfect, I replied. And for the first time since I had awakened in the past, I truly meant it. I wasn't counting betrayals anymore. I wasn't calculating moves and countermoves in an elaborate game. I was simply living. And that was enough.